Third time's a charm. Alrighty. Happy birthday, Sadie. And to the rest of you, welcome to my little blip on Mother Horror Celebrate Horror 2020. My name is Kelli Owen, and I am not only reading for you because Sadie asked, I'm reading this particular piece because she demanded it. This is the opening for Wilted Lilies, edited a little bit for time. Mimo said I was an old soul. Mama always said I had the shine. And Papa, the light-eyed girl picked at something invisible on her skirt. Papa was afraid of me. You see, I knew things. I didn't know how. I just did. Mama says I've been like that since I was little. Oh, I didn't know nothing useful. Didn't know the lotto numbers or how many gumballs were in the jar at the fair. But I knew when people was going to pass. She leaned closer and whispered. And I could hear things. She licked her lips and stared at the pattern in her skirt. The man could see she was remembering and had learned long ago silence would get people to open up much easier than asking. He waited. If I let my insides get real quiet, I could hear what people were thinking. It's like they was thinking too loud when they was in turmoil or hurting. I didn't mean to, and I didn't want to, but I couldn't turn it off. Fact is, when I was little, I thought everyone could do it. I thought it was normal. It wasn't anything close to normal, and Sussex County is the last place you want to be different. It's too small, too tight. I don't have no friends. Not 'cause the kids don't like me, because their folks don't want 'em near me. My family was shunned because of me. Mama and Papa and Meemaw with me. But they were okay with that. Mostly. Her fingers went up to the closed locket hanging on a tarnished chain around her neck. I suppose you want to hear about that Jenkins boy, though. He nodded, leaning closer to the tape recorder between them. It started in church. She leaned back and closed her eyes, smiling as if she could see something beautiful and peaceful beyond those lids. I was singing the praises of the Lord at the top of my lungs. I wasn't singing in church, you see. I was singing beyond the church, towards heaven, so's he could hear my voice above the rest. It was a warm spring day, and I was wearing a new dress. It was perfect. And then I heard it. In the middle of the second hallelujah, clear as if whispered right into my ear, someone said, I'm going to kill her. I stopped singing. I looked around wondering who could think such a thing during church and during praise. I felt real funny, like my insides were twisting in on themselves and my heart was pounding too hard, but too slow. That was the last inside voice I heard from the living. The girl opened her eyes, wet with glassy tears. She caught his gaze and held him there, trapped, even though her focus was past him into something only she could see. Her body frame and posture were true to her young age, but those silver eyes held years far beyond her own. It was like staring at the moon, and he couldn't decide if they were an extremely light blue or truly silver in nature. Her bottom lip quivered, and she broke the unintentional stare. World went quiet that day, too quiet. It had been noisy for so very long, so noisy. I took to wander in the woods behind our house when I was little, to be alone, to find quiet. I spent all my 15 years on this earth trying to hide from everyone's insides, trying to get out, to get away from their thoughts and fears and anger. You see, I don't always get the happy thoughts. I rarely got to hear about love. But longing? Oh, I knew about longing. I knew who missed who and who wanted who, and it weren't always the right people. Longing is strong when folk think too loud, but fear and anger, they were always so much louder. Longing is like a whisper tickling me. Anger and fear, those drag me out of whatever else I was doing and come on like unannounced dinner guests. Shucks, I used to answer my papa all the time before I realized He was thinking those thoughts and not actually saying them out loud. But in the church, when it went all quiet, that was different. I was glad for the quiet, but it also scared me. It was strange to me, like being deaf all of a sudden. And worse, I had heard someone threaten someone else and didn't know who it was. I was panicked. I was about to be a murderer, because knowing and not doing anything about it is just as good as doing it myself. She grabbed her skirt in her fingers and pinched at the material as she twisted it. She swallowed audibly. "Do you want a glass of water, hon?" He raised an eyebrow and waited to see if she remembered he was sitting there. She shook her head. "No, I just want to be done with it." "Okay. Can you tell me when you started hearing the other voices?" She nodded, swallowed hard again, and sighed. "Weren't long after that day in church when I started hearing other things. See, after Sunday services, we all gather in the church basement for a big old lunch. Then the kids go out and play in the front yard, and I usually end up walking through the graves out back to find quiet. At least I used to. The quiet had been so loud after a couple days it was almost normal at that point. I was almost used to it. But the back of the graves, where the daisies start tangling with the honeysuckle and brambles, it was anything but quiet. I could hear things again all of a sudden, like when your ears pop and everything seems really loud. I looked around the cemetery to try and find out who I was hearing. Her eyes got wider as she spoke, and she stopped abruptly, snapping her head up at him. "But I suppose I have to tell you about that Jenkins boy first, so's you understand what came after." He nodded and glanced at the clock on the wall before eyeballing the recorder between them. After the county fair picked up and left town the summer before that day in church, the cleanup crew found little Tommy Jenkins dead, who was a heck of a shock to everyone. But it wasn't just that he was dead, laying face down among the trash and the weeds in the trampled field. It was that this was the second time he'd been found dead. And there you go. The opening for Wilted Lilies. Thanks for listening. Thank you, Sadie, for inviting me. I hope you have a fantastic birthday weekend. And may the rest of you enjoy the rest of Celebrate Horror 2020. Stay safe.